Hi, my name is Brandie Paterakis, and I'm the owner of Blue Bee Counseling Services. I'm a mother and wife who is passionate about life and has found joy in helping others improve their mental health. The goal of this podcast is not only to provide enriching entertainment, but to help others in their pathway to have a more fulfilling life. This in no way is a replacement for therapy. Follow us on this journey of mental health awareness. Blue Bee Counseling Services now presents this podcast, Therapist Table Talk. Thanks for joining us on Therapist Table Talk today. My name is Brandie Paterakis. I'm the owner of Blue Bee Counseling Services located in South Jordan, Utah. I am an LCSW, and I have a friend here with me today. She's been on before. Hopefully you remember her. Her name is Tara. Tara, tell us.
About me?
Yeah, a little bit about yourself.
I'm a CSW. I work at South Point Counseling Services. I primarily work with teenagers and adults. Anxiety, depression. I really enjoy working with clients who want to work on inner child work, parts work, attachment work, and trauma.
Ooh, yeah. Which is good because that's what we're talking about today. Yeah. Which I'll have to admit to you, I'm a little bit like I understand this concept that we're going to be talking about, right, but I kind of didn't know as much as I just researched and found out more about. Right. So I'm kind of a little bit excited. I was talking about it this morning and I'm like, I am excited for this session today. Yeah. I think this is going to be really fun. And so now that you all are wondering what we're going to be talking about today, here it is. Are you ready? Drum roll. The drum roll. And what we're going to be talking about is attachment theory. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's 4 different kinds of attachment theory. And basically what attachment theory is, let's go ahead and give a little bit of applause to the founders of attachment theory. Yay.
Yes. Bowlby.
Yep. So we have John Bowlby in the 1950s, and then it was expanded on by Mary Ainsworth in the early 1970s. Yeah. 1970. That's been
a while ago. Right.
Yes, but it's interesting because I didn't learn about attachment theory in school.
I didn't either. Like, it was just working with clients and starting to ask more questions. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, like working with my own therapist where she would bring it up, like that's where it was like, oh my gosh, this is like a big deal. Mm-hmm. This is a huge deal to help clients heal.
Yeah, so I love this. A lot of trauma work.
A lot of trauma work. Yeah. Yeah,
this is fascinating. Mm-hmm. And so I found that basically, for those of you that do not understand what attachment theory is, we're going to kind of explain it to you. Mm-hmm. So do you have like a good explanation of attachment theory?
I think my explanation that I tend to say with my clients is that, particularly the ones where I ask if they have trauma and they tell me no, but they're struggling with significant beliefs that they have about themselves and the world, particularly negative beliefs or behaviors that they're struggling with. Mm-hmm. If they're saying, well, no, I don't have any trauma per se, I will start to ask them about their relationship with their parents or their caregivers. And generally what I say is the attachments that we have with our parents play a big part in our attachments that we have with people when we're older and how we see ourselves and how we see the world around us. And so if their attachment wasn't great to their parents, then there's a really big chance that those problems that came up with their parents are going to be affecting them as an adult. And so that's kind of just a really short summary to kind of start out with clients to kind of help them understand. And I particularly will mention emotional attachment. Like, I will ask questions like, did you have a good emotional connection with your parents? You know, could they kind of tell how you were feeling and did they respond appropriately? Like questions like that to start to uncover their relationship with their parents is usually how I start. So
I love that. I'm kind of sitting on the other side of the microphone right now in the video with all those parents that are like, oh crap.
What have I done? Right.
What have I done? And I did something wrong as a parent because my children have significant complications with issues in daily life and some of their behaviors. And so we just want to really clarify right now that this is most likely probably not you.
Right.
Most likely probably not you. Now when I say that, maybe it is. Mm-hmm. And so there are some personality things that biologically speaking, children are born with. And there are also issues that kind of come up where it's not really your fault as a parent in some scenarios because if you would have known better, you would have done it differently.
Absolutely. And when I was speaking, I work primarily with adults and sometimes teenagers. So that's something that I would say to an adult that's coming in with adult problems, not necessarily like a parent that's coming in with,
with their
struggles
children.
with their children per se. But like just coming from that, like if an adult comes in with, their children struggling with some things, definitely we would look at like, how are you connecting with your kids? How can we make that stronger so that they feel really connected to you?
I love that. Yeah. What a good clarification. And just for you as mothers and parents on the other side of this, just recognize that we're all about self-love here.
Right.
And recognizing that there are some things that, we could have done, shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Absolutely.
Right? Shoulda, coulda, woulda, done better when we were a little bit younger raising our children, but wish we would have known differently.
Yes, I know.
But this wasn't, this was formed in the 1970s or 50s, right? Reestablished in the 1970s or expanded on. But we just didn't know about this. Even as therapists.
No.
We did not know about this.
Yeah, we did not know. It's relatively new. And so, any parents, including myself, when I look back, is like, I have to give myself a lot of compassion, because if you just you don't know what you don't know, and you do the best that you can.
Yeah.
And so there's always opportunity for improvement with an emotional connection with your kids. However old they are, you can always work to establish a better emotional connection.
I love that.
And a better attachment with them.
The thing here is that we're not going to leave you empty-handed today. We are going to definitely give you some tips and tricks on how to solve some of these issues if you're finding them in your own homes.
Right.
Again, just a little bit of a claim here. We are not professionals on this subject.
Right.
We are not totally dived in and know everything there is to know. And so
we're still learning.
We are still learning.
Yeah.
And so if you have those comments that you want to make under this, because you are one of those people, we would love to hear them. And so we just find a little bit of a love that we use, a little bit of this in a lot of this in our in our therapy with our clients.
Right.
This is great. So let's go ahead and dive in a little bit about this. So basically what we're talking about is a child's relationship to their parents, early ages, and to help them feel loved, secure, protected, and safe.
Yes.
And if we can do that, then it tends to formulate better connections in life, better ability to function in daily life, better responses to things, better to communicate with others, hold down jobs easier. They're more able to have self-confidence and be able to really do things in a really positive way for their life.
Explore the world and to have positive beliefs about themselves.
I love that.
Yeah.
Which I'm super excited about. So this is why this is so fascinating for us. And so we're going to dive into it and help you understand. What we're going to kind of do here is we're going to talk a little bit about each of the 4 types of attachment theory. Now, there's a bunch of different names out there.
Right.
There's a lot of more. We kind of just took all the names and just dove them into 4 sections that are out there. And some of you might be like, no, this one needs to have its own area. And that's probably true.
Right.
But for time purposes, we kind of just did a broader range on these areas. And so we're going to go into each area of attachments, and then we're going to also talk about what to look for in those areas. How do you know? And how to parent. If you're a young mom, you're getting ready to have kids, or you're a grandparent, to recognize some of the ways to really make that secure attachment to your children and grandchildren. The other thing that we're going to do is after the attachments, then we're going to talk, or each of the areas, then we're going to talk about how to tell. How to tell if your children have those, or which area they kind of belong in. And then from there, we're going to talk about what kind of happens to the kids. What do they become as adults? And so this is going to be a fascinating piece here today where we're going to really dive into some attachment theory. And we hope that you stay along the ride, because this is quite interesting, what I've dove in for research.
It's fascinating.
And what you have.
Yeah.
Okay, let's dive in. So the first one that we have is called a secure attachment. And as you guys can mostly understand, it is about safety and security.
Right. That your kids feel really safe in their relationship with you, and that gives them permission to go and explore the world knowing that they can always come back to you and get that safety and that security and that emotional connection that they need with them as they're growing and developing.
I kind of see this as like availability.
Right.
Like you're available to your child. And you're also, I found it interesting because when I looked into this a little bit more, it talks about a couple of ways to do this, like such as like picking them up.
Right.
You know, when they're feeling a little bit unsafe, to like have that moment where you can pick them up, help them soothe and teach them ways to self-soothe themselves. It's like, I kind of also think of it as like the meaningful moments of the day, like choosing 5 minutes of meaningful moment to be with your children,
right?
So that they can see that you really see them and are available to them and want good things for them and explore things with them. And it's those parents that get down and play with them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And which I found that it only takes 5 minutes of that a day to like
to
help your kids feel security.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? And so then I go back and I'm like, did I spend 5 minutes with my kids every day?
Or can I start doing that now?
Yeah.
You know, can I make that a goal?
And yes, I would say yes on that.
Yeah,
you can.
Absolutely.
Start today.
Yeah.
Yes. Which is great. A safe place, giving them a safe place to express their emotions and their negative emotions.
Absolutely. And being like our job is to help them understand what they're feeling. So being emotionally attuned to them so that when they start getting angry or upset, you can first of all notice that they are getting angry, upset, and help them start putting words to it and bodily sensations and helping them learn how to deal with those emotions in an appropriate way. Yes. So, you know, just that attunement that you are watching and helping them figure all of those emotions out.
I love being self-aware and then aware of ourselves too.
Right. Like if we're getting triggered and upset.
Yes.
You know, like being an example to them of how to manage that in a healthy way.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yes. So we can also help ourselves figure out, where is that coming from and how do I, if I did maybe have a secure attachment when I was younger, how can I give that to myself now?
Right.
Which is fascinating. It also talks about trust, having self-esteem, becoming emotionally intelligent is like a big thing. They also hold down successful jobs and relationships.
They do.
Which is fascinating to see, and don't we all want that?
Right.
We can recognize the doors of opportunity when they present ourselves instead of the self-sabotaging phases we get into.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think trust is important because your kids need to know that they can trust you. So whatever you say, you'll follow up on it, or they trust you to protect them from, you know, the things that aren't appropriate for them for their age. And the more that they understand that, mom and dad have my back, I can rely on them, they're going to be there for me, the more they will grow up in this sense that adults can be trusted. You know, I can trust other adults and I can trust myself.
I love that. So it means that not only by you trusting or by them trusting you as a parent, you also learn how to trust other adults.
Exactly. And the opposite side is what we want to avoid is if we don't want them to grow up and be like, I can't trust anyone. Adults aren't trustworthy because I couldn't trust mom and dad. And so again, it's that generalization that tends to happen is whatever happens with your relationship with your kids, they're going to generalize it when they get older to other adults.
Ooh, that's so good.
Yeah.
I also find it interesting, the fact that we're coming on a new motion here in the world where we're allowing fathers to take time off when they have a brand new baby. What do they call that again?
Paternity leave?
Paternity leave, that's right. And so I find that really interesting, the paternity leave, so that the fathers can gain an attachment to these babies at a very young age. And it's fascinating to think about babies and attachment. Yeah. You wouldn't think that they'd be old enough to recognize or understand. No.
Yeah, but it starts pre-verbal. From what I have learned, the attachment starts right at birth. And even though they don't obviously have the cognition to understand, they have a sense of, are they being taken care of?
Yeah. And some of you believe before birth. Yeah. Right? They hear the voice of the parents. They know the safety.
Absolutely. They know the safety. Yeah.
And so I found it interesting in trauma work that they actually brought in babies and did trauma work on babies to change some of these, I think the trauma that they were having and their PTSD towards certain environments. Right. And the trauma work was fascinating to watch on this. Right. And so that is fascinating. So how do we tell? How do we tell if your child or if you, right, if you have like a secure attachment.
I would think one of the first things is to look at the beliefs you have about yourself. Mm-hmm. Do you believe that you're lovable? Do you believe that you're good enough? Do you believe that you can try hard things and succeed? You know, just how many of your beliefs are positive versus negative? And I think that's one way to look at it. I think another way is to look at how you see the world. Do you see the world as basically good, or do you see the world as basically, you know, evil and I have to shield and protect from like kind of those basic beliefs, I think, is something to look at to see if your attachment is good.
I love that. That is really cool. And here's the other thing is watching some of your children's statements.
Right.
So when they come to you and they use filling words like, Mom or Dad, I felt sad today when Sally stole my doll from me.
Like that's perfect. Right?
Because they're using those emotion words.
Right.
Yeah. And teaching them how to use them if
not. And I think the other thing is to watch your kids. Do they feel okay exploring their new world? You know, like are they trying new things, even just little steps, to see, because that's what a secure attachment enables, is these kids to start to explore, knowing that they can come back and get that safety and that protection and that emotional connection that they need.
I love that. I found it fascinating that they talk about it like a yo-yo, where it's like they go out, but they come back. And they are like looking to make sure you're at the bench. You know, like if you go and explore a new playground, like they'll run and they'll play, and they'll kind of give you a little look. They come back and give you a hug, like you're safe and secure. You're going to be here for me. Thank you.
Right.
And then they go again.
Yeah.
And that yo-yo type effect is really important to relationships. And I'm like thinking about that as an adult now. Am I yo-yoing with my own mother? Like, I can go out into the world and then come back and be like, hey, Mom, guess what I found?
Right. And how does your mom respond to when you're going out and exploring the world and coming back, you know? We want to encourage our kids to do that to their appropriate maturity and age, obviously, and encourage that exploration and encourage that so that when you aren't around and when they're not living with you, that they still have that mindset that I can explore the world. I have the confidence to do that. And I have the confidence that when things don't go well, I can pick myself up and be okay.
It's not the end of the world.
It's not the end of the world.
That is a really important thing to learn and find, especially right now when, you know, the world feels so hard sometimes.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's also just important to realize that just like adults, kids will have good and bad days when, you know, some days they do feel like exploring the world and other days they don't, and that's okay too. It's not like this direct upward trajectory that we have to allow for good days and bad days with our kids as well.
I love that. Yeah. Here's the other thing. Let's put a little disclaimer in here, which is the fact that, like, you might be a parent that raises and trains and does the same thing to each of your children.
Oh my gosh.
You probably, right? And you probably give them that safety and security and you make them feel at home. But one child just does not see it the same way.
Right.
You know, and they see like the world from a different lens. And because of that, they don't feel safe and secure, even though you did all the things, you know, that you're taught to do or that's in the book. And then for them to not feel safety and security in that. And so.
And that happens, right? Like, I don't know about you, but my kids are very different. And they have different ways of exploring the world that are completely different. And so I think as parents, we have to give ourselves as much compassion, you know, and looking back, being like, okay, I did the best I could with the knowledge that I have. This kid is a unique person with unique genetics and unique personality. And I've done the best I can, and I can continue to work on having a secure relationship with my child.
Yes. And that might look different.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
It took me until probably, I think my child was almost 17 before I figured it out. And then, but it wasn't too late.
Because I'm still trying to figure it out.
I'm like, it is not too late at age 17.
It's never too late. I think that's the idea, is it's never too late to work on that.
Yes. And it did work. Like, I changed my ways that I responded to her, the way that I noticed and saw her, and it really helped our relationship, and she was able to come back and, like, really feel loved by me, which she didn't feel for a long time. Imagine that. People don't feel loved by me. That's just so weird. I'm a very lovable person, gosh darn it.
Yeah,
but one of my children did not feel that way.
Kids need different types of love, and sometimes it takes a while to figure that out.
Yeah, and for me too, and recognize what I was doing wrong wasn't helpful for her in the way that she saw it.
Right.
And so I take accountability for that, change that, and because I can't change her, right?
Right.
I can only change myself. Yeah. And so choosing to change myself. Can we also add in, we added in the biological. Right. We also added in the fact that they might just be different.
They might, yeah.
They might see things different. Can we also add in that there's trauma from other avenues that might make a mix in here?
Right.
There might be situations or insecurities that kind of happen with other people in their lives.
Friends, school, culture, religion. I mean, it could come from many different areas, right?
Yes. And so this just gives us the best chances for success
with
our children.
Right.
And so it's not a cure-all.
It's not a cure-all. No, it's not. And the best we can do is to continue to work on tuning in with our kids. The more we can tune in with them and help them explore their inner world, the more that we can help them as individual kids.
Yes, I love this. I always kind of saw secure attachment as those parents that were like, when things become hard, I can help you.
Oh, right.
Right. Let me help you. I'm not going to do it all for you, but I'm definitely going to be there as a support to help you through it. I have a neighbor and she's wonderful. I probably said this before on the podcast, but the fact of, she told me, I said, oh my gosh, your kids are just so awesome. They are just so kind and loving and helpful. And what in the world did you do as a parent that worked? Right. And she said, I was just always there for them. Yeah. I was always available to them. And I always helped them when things got a little bit rough. And I thought that is a beautiful thing. Yeah. It is. I mean, I am not always there all the time for my children. Right. Can we just be the best to say that? Right. I'm like, oh, that hurt. You better get up and get to school.
Yes. And I like the always can maybe for some people, including myself, be like, that's impossible. I can't always be there for them. So I always like the wording more often than not.
Yes. I love more often than not.
More often than not, I was there for them. More often than not, this is what I did to make you feel wanted and loved.
Yes, and there are some situations that come up, like people that have to work a lot, and their child needs to come home from school, and you're like, I'm going to get fired if I leave work. Right. And so then having that conversation with your children and letting them know, I wanted to be there, and I am so sorry that I'm not, and letting them feel that attachment through that, of that emergency situation. Right. So I found this interesting. So what becomes of kids with this secure attachment? Yeah. And those of you out there, you can look for some of these things in yourself. But honest, I thought that was important. Because honest is an insecurity. To be dishonest is an insecurity. Right. Supportive, comfortable with sharing their feelings, and success in their relationships and in their jobs, which I thought is fascinating. Right.
I would probably add on to that, comfortable expressing their needs.
Ooh, good, yes.
As well. Not only expressing their emotions, all of their emotions, and they're able to, deal with all of their emotions, particularly the negative ones, in a healthy way.
Yes, so have that emotional intelligence. Right. To recognize, ooh, this feels really big right now. Yeah. I'm recognizing my body's signs and symptoms. Let's get out of this for a minute. Yep. Let's cope, and then I can come back and readdress. Right. Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, so the second one that we're going to talk about is avoidant, and which is anxious avoidant or avoidant insecure. Okay. Could be some things. And so these can kind of co-mix with one another. We found it's kind of interesting, but they struggle to respond sensitively. Also considered an insecure attachment style. Right. And children with an anxious attachment styles may be clingy or crave attention from their caregivers, but may also push them away. And I thought that was kind of interesting because being pushed away by a child, don't bother me. Right, don't bother me. Yeah, what does that mean? Yeah, right? I'm talking to my friends right now. Go away. Go away. Yeah. Instead of being like, hold on just a minute, talking to the child and then coming back to your relation or to your conversation that you're having. But it's interesting, some of the things. Instead of comforting the child, they share a couple of things that people usually do, such as minimize their feelings. They reject their demands. Right. They don't help with difficult tasks. So this feels heavy and hard, Mom. Can you help me? And they're like, no, you got this, and you're going to be grounded if you don't do it.
Yeah, and
I'm like, oh crap, that might be me. No,
well, and it's a balance, but I think it's when kids get some sort of sense that I'm on my own. Like I have to manage all of this stuff by myself, including my emotions, and like my parents aren't there for me.
Oh, that sounds so sad.
I know.
Right? Let's see. Kids may have to help a parent with their own needs.
Yeah.
Was it fascinating? I didn't even think about that one.
Right.
Where they're like feeling the need to like console their parents or to help their parents if the parents feel like they're always in distress, or you can feel the trauma around in the parents. Like these kids might also be the parents that are have really sick parents, maybe going through chemotherapy,
absolutely
struggling with issues, their own trauma. Those type of kids. And
I think the belief with kids, what happens is if they are tending to their parents' beliefs or things like that, because of these reasons, they can pick up the belief that their needs and emotions aren't as important as other people's. And so they will shut those down.
Yes.
And then they can tend to be avoidant.
I found that really interesting. Instead of turning to a parent when distressed, they will minimize showing negative emotions.
Right.
Which I thought was fascinating, to be like, ooh, I'm fine. Right.
And I have found, like, with quite a few clients, particularly female clients, if they were called drama queens when they were little, that was their tendency. Okay, I guess I just need to shut down all these negative emotions because that's not okay in my household. And so, yeah.
Wow, I didn't even think about drama queens.
Right.
That's interesting.
And it's not necessarily that they're, quote, drama queens. They were just showing emotion or negative emotion, and their caregivers would just shut that down. And so...
Stop dramatizing the situation.
Right. You're making this big deal. And so they will pick up the belief that those aren't okay. My negative emotions aren't okay. So I guess I just have to shut those down and deal with them myself, which they don't know how to do because they were never taught. So,
Which is really difficult.
So that's one example. There's many. But.
Yeah, those are many. Okay, so how to tell if you or one of your loved ones or even your children are avoidant. At ease interacting with a stranger. I thought that was interesting. Right. They have no problem interacting with people they don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good
You would
one.
think that would be secure.
Right. And I think it's as they get older, right? Like you would naturally think that little children are going to struggle a little bit with that, but as they get older, can they interact with strangers?
Yes.
And like maybe starting in the teenager years, are they starting to look at more romantic relationships? Are they starting to feel into that versus are they completely avoiding those things?
Yeah, that is interesting. They find a safe place to share their emotions, even their negative emotions.
Yeah.
So,
and not only do they share them, they understand that it's okay to share them, and they're important to share, and that their needs are important, that they can verbalize those needs.
Yes, very important. The emotional intelligence, like recognizing those, and being able to help those with, or to navigate those in their relationships with others.
Right.
It could be difficult to have that. Yeah. Okay, so a couple of things. Let me find my paper. Let's see. What they become. Let's talk about some things of what they become. Actually, there's a couple of things. They won't turn to their parent for comfort.
Right.
The child is happy to run off and explore and won't return to check on the parent. So you know how we talked about the yo-yo with the attachment? This one is more where they run off, but they don't come back to like check on the parents or to make sure that they're okay. And the super self-reliant. They prefer and figure things out by themselves.
Yeah.
Thought that was fascinating.
Right.
Okay, so what they become. Let's talk about what kind of adults these type of children become. They struggle to commit.
Yep.
They may avoid relationships. We talked about that. They're dismissive.
Yeah.
And fearful, and they keep people at a distance.
Yeah.
So,
like emotionally and physically. Like it can be either or both.
Like I don't want to hug you.
Yeah. Right.
I feel uncomfortable
or it's, the couple that gets married and whatever the man or the woman is just emotionally unavailable. And just has no concept of that, and let's just shut that whole thing down.
Yeah, I love this. I think that this is so fascinating to talk about and hear all these different attachment types. So let's dive into the third one, which is anxious. It could also be anxious ambivalent or anxious insecure. And I thought that was super interesting to kind of classify all these kind of in, and again, they kind of mix and match in some of these.
They do.
So response to child's needs sporadically. They're there, they're not there.
Yeah.
So
they don't know. They don't know.
Yeah, they don't know if the parents are going to be available to them or not.
Right.
And this type of style is considered an insecure attachment style. As a child, your caregivers may be emotionally distant or absent.
Yeah.
I thought that was fascinating. They don't usually seek out their caregivers during distress.
Yeah.
They're more of, they'll tend to go to like maybe like a dog or an animal or a stuffed animal, or they won't find a way to cope and feel that self-soothing.
Right.
And so those are kind of interesting. I like how they also talk about they can't rely on parents to be there when needed. They struggle with feelings of security.
Yeah.
And the child becomes demanding or clingy. They don't feel safe to leave their parents to explore. So
because they distrust them. They distrust them.
So those are the kids at the playground that are like, I'm not going anywhere.
Right.
Or you drop them off at a caregiver's house and they're like attaching onto you and don't want to leave you alone.
Right.
And they even said that sometimes they'll even pull out distress. Like they'll cry really a lot bigger than normal in order to see the parents and how the parents are responding to their cry to make them feel like they're safe and secure, that the parent isn't going to leave them.
Right.
So those are some things to think about. They become needy, angry, and distrustful, which is interesting.
Yeah.
They won't turn to the parent for comfort. And a child is happy to run off and explore and won't return to check on the parent, which is kind of fascinating.
Yeah.
Super self-reliant. They prefer to figure out things by themselves. And what they become is they struggle to commit. They may avoid relationships, dismissful, fearful, and they keep people at a distance.
Yeah.
So those are, like, you can feel the mood.
Right.
Like, feel the mood kind of going down. And we're about to hit into like the last one, which is even harder. They talk about like the first three is organized and the last one is disorganized.
Yeah.
And
this
so
is disorganized, where they're kind of all over the place.
This is where I pull out chocolate in my office.
Right.
And I'm like, let's eat some chocolate because about now we're going to get into some hard stuff.
Right.
And so what you're about to hear is going to be difficult to navigate. Okay, so disorganized. It's also can be related to fearful avoidant, disorganized insecure attachment. So.
Right. They tend to go back and forth with avoidant, and then they get really anxious. So 1 minute maybe they are shutting down and not being there for their partner, and then the next minute they're like super anxious about it and they're texting them all the time. Right. It just kind of goes back and forth, and you can see that play out in children too, where they kind of will tend to go back and forth.
Yes, which could be difficult. They seem so it's confused.
Yeah,
confusion.
They're just confused.
Some of the actions and behaviors of the caregivers may have not been consistent. If you have this attachment style, your behaviors may appear confusing. We kind of talked about that. Yeah. You might be aloof one day and emotional the next. Right. In adulthood, this attachment style is often associated with mental health conditions.
Right.
So this is like personality disorders. This is where some of those can come out. Or mood disorders.
Yeah, absolutely. Because they do express like intense emotions at times and not have a lot of emotional regulation.
Which is fascinating. I looked into this and they said that 15% of babies in groups with low psychological risk could have a mood disorder, where 82% in babies in a high-risk situation develop this attachment disorder.
Right. Wow.
So I thought that was fascinating how 82% of babies in high-risk situations could develop this kind of an attachment.
Right.
So usually parents who cause this in children have unresolved trauma. So, unresolved trauma. What are some things that like you would recognize, or we could tell our listeners or viewers about unresolved trauma? Can you tell if you have some unresolved trauma?
So, like when I have clients come in that are struggling, I will often say, like, our goal in therapy is to get you into this happy medium ground where you have your emotions. I tend to focus more on emotions, but you're able to process them in a way that's appropriate for the environment or for the situation. So for example, I'll just give you an example. Like if you have a partner that you text and they don't immediately text back, are you like, is your behavior and is your emotion appropriate for just a non-response? Or are you like overdoing something, or are you shutting down and kind of those extremes we're trying to get you away from? And so I always have clients start to look for their extreme behaviors and see if that is an indication of maybe some trauma or some attachment work that needs to be done.
I love that.
Yeah.
I also look at thought patterns.
Right.
Like what are some visuals that are coming into your mind about your past?
Yes.
You'll have like reoccurring little videos that replay in your mind every so often, or words that were being said to you, and you'll hear those words in your everyday living of little things that you're doing. The other thing that I've noticed in trauma is that PTSD, you don't know why your body is having a physical reaction to that thing. And there's no reason mindset for it, because your mind doesn't go there, because this is all subconsciously done.
So starting to look at like your internal thoughts and your behaviors, and if they seem to be extreme or you're frustrated by them, right? Because you can't seem to change them.
I love that. So that's how we can tell about unresolved trauma and that attachment disorder that can kind of feed into that. Children feel fear to approach a parent, so they won't want to go and talk to their dad about going to that sleepover or going to that place, and or doing that thing, or needing $5 for school lunch. They have a harder time going and talking to their parents. They don't feel cared for or protected. Parents reject, ridicule, and frighten their child in submission. So trying to get them to conform to the ideas, they'll kind of use a gruff voice. They'll say hard or hurtful things to get them to like maneuver over to their side of thinking. Which is difficult, because these kids are coming up with all sorts of different types of thinking that we're not used to right now. And
also if parents tend to use guilt to motivate their kids like heavily, that can be really problematic.
Or that manipulation.
The manipulation,
Yep. Let's see. On here it talks about child develops behaviors to help them feel safe. They'll become aggressive. They refuse care. They'll become super self-reliant. So those are some behaviors that they will take upon themselves in order to make up for where their parents are not. How to tell. Okay, here we go. Last one, how to tell. So if you run to a parent for comfort, but will kick and struggle with the parent when the parent tries to comfort them. I thought that was fascinating. Like, oh, I want you, but like, don't help me. Don't help me.
Right. It's that insecurity, right? Like that natural need to want to go to your parents, but then you actually don't know how they're going to respond.
And then you rejecting the response.
And then you rejecting the response.
The child totally ignores the presence of the parent. I thought that was interesting. So a parent comes walking in the room and they're like, just ignore them. Pretend they're not there. The child appears dazed or confused when the parent is around. That's kind of some fascinating topics, because they're probably not used to the parent being there. So now, like, why are you here? I'm really good with like doing my own thing the way that I usually do my own day. And now you're here and you're wanting to parent me. I don't know what to do with this.
And they don't like that.
It could become scary or fearful for them. Okay, so what they become. So these type of disorganized attachment, will most likely show mental disorders or mood personality disorders. There will be impaired formal operational skills, and they'll struggle with self-regulation, complications with relationships, and they'll see things from a different lens or perspective.
Absolutely.
So there you have it.
Yeah.
All 4 of them. I can feel the mood. It's just like, dun, dun, dun. Maybe we should have started with this one.
It's a heavy topic, right?
It is.
It's a heavy topic. Because I think it affects children, like our whole lives. We struggle with attachment and getting that healthy attachment. And so it is a hard topic to talk about. Because I think we all come out of childhood with wounds, right? All of us do. None of us are perfect. And so to be able to kind of do our very best in helping our kids the best we can to have the least amount of wounding, and also taking responsibility as adults to address our own wounds.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. I think that is so important. And
Yeah.
I think then the number one thing that we have to remember here is just that, like, we just need to be nice to ourselves.
Yeah.
Be nice to ourselves about being a parent. If we were a parent that maybe produced some disorganized attachment disorders in our kids' lives, to just recognize it.
Yeah.
And recognize it, give a little bit of self-love to the fact that if you would have known, you would have done it differently.
Yeah.
But there was things that obviously got in the way for you in that moment of time. And so now, starting now, being aware, having your eyes opened, and that awareness can now say, okay, now what do I want to do about it? Because I can start today.
Right.
I can be in the here and now, in the moment. I can start today, and I can produce a better future.
Absolutely. For yourself and for your kids. No matter how old your kids are.
Yeah. I think the moral of the story here is there's a lot of things that go into raising a child.
Right.
And it's just not all our own fault.
No, it's not.
But what we can do is to minimize the amount of distress or complications for raising our children is to adhere to maybe more of the secure attachment.
Right.
And recognize how can I get that secure attachment in my life? And how can I get it in my life now as an adult so I can have that self-confidence and recognize the value that I can produce in the world, which is so important to have. I think it's being mindful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, and just knowing that it's just a lifelong process, that we continue to work on our attachment and heal ourselves, and it's a lifelong process to have a relationship with our kids, and and just continually making that emotional connection with them.
I love that,
because we all you're there for them.
Want to be seen, heard, validated, understood, and adored.
Right.
We all do.
Right.
And so if we can just give that 5 minutes of that meaningful moment to our children every day, and maybe even 5 minutes to ourselves, like that meaningful moment to ourselves, to really ground ourselves and help give ourselves what maybe we didn't have in our past or in our childhood, we're already on the way towards like trauma healing.
Yeah. And I think it's, if you have a tendency to worry and fret about, oh my gosh, I did these terrible things, or I didn't do this, or I didn't do that, or like this happened to me and my parents were terrible, or whatever it is that you tend to ruminate on, kind of recognize that you're doing that and validate your feelings. Obviously that, you know, there's some disappointment or anger or grief or loss. And at the same time be like, okay, what's one little thing that I could do to heal myself or to make that little connection with my kids? You know, so give yourself something to do about it, as opposed to just sitting in that rumination and regret and loss and grief.
Yeah, that's an easy place to get stuck, isn't it?
It is. It is.
It has addictive qualities to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It makes you want to sit there. And so getting that, I always call it's the thread. You look down, there's a thread that just kind of pokes in the middle of your mind, and you just grab onto it, and it just springs you out of it. Yeah. Just do the opposite right when you're thinking there. About it. Well, this has been a really good topic. I love attachment disorders. Yeah. I find, or attachment, the different attachments that are on here, I think that is super insightful to remember into our own lives, and something that all of our listeners and our viewers can do something about it today.
Absolutely.
And in trying to change their attachment styles and get it right. Yeah. And most of the time. Right? More than not.
More often than not.
More than not.
Not perfect. We're not going for perfection.
We're not perfect.
Right.
Anyway, thank you so much for joining us today. And we hope you love our Therapist Table Talk on attachments today. And if you do want to watch this in person, we are showing this on YouTube. You can check out YouTube under Therapist Table Talk. You can also go to the website, which is www.blue is in the color, B is in the bumblebee, LCSW, and you can find all of our podcasts there as well. So thank you for joining us today, and we hope that you will have a wonderful week of trying out some new attachments.
Right.
Trying out some new things to alter and correct and make yourself feel a little bit better.
Secure.
Yeah, more secure.